All right, welcome back to Adobe Photoshop. And today we're going to be taking a look, our first stint at blending modes. Blending modes, if you've never used them before, can be very difficult to understand. But when it comes to compositing or editing photos, they can be very dynamic. And the trick with blending modes, actually using them, it's understanding what they do. Because inside of Photoshop, everybody thinks you can just do magic and things work perfectly, but it doesn't work like that. You need to take two different images that are going to work well together. And by using blending modes, it's really easy to blend them together. We can also use blending modes simply to edit or adjust a photo. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this image, and first of all, I'm just going to show you how to put two images together, just in case you don't know how to do that. And then we're going to dive into the different blending modes. And I'm going to do my best to fully explain what they're doing. It's going to be up to you to practice. You will not learn this overnight. So this is going to be our first image, and I just tried to pick random simple images that are going to work well together. So this is our main image, okay? And I'm going to unlock this because I want to rename it. So to unlock a file, you can see right here, it's got a lock. Just double click on that, that opens, you click it, it's gone. We're going to rename this as our base because when we blend, there's the blend layer and the base layer. And so the base layer is the bottom layer and the blend layer is the top layer. So we're going to slide on over to this image and I'm going to show you how to move this in two different ways. This way is the easiest, and this works great when you have a single layer. But if you were to do a whole bunch of different things to it, and I'll show you, the other way works better. You can simply hit Command A, which is select all. We're going to hit Command or Control C, which is copy, and then go back to our other image in Command and Control V, which is paste. Now, the ratios are a little bit different for this, but in what we're going to do for blending, it's not going to matter. So I'm simply going to delete this because we're going to show you the other way. So you're going to go back to this image, and I'm actually going to adjust a little bit. So bring up this, and let's go ahead and make this black and white, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring it up again, and we're going to make a curves adjustment layer, and we're going to try to make those whites pretty bright. All right, that looks pretty good because we just want the birds. Probably not the best way to do this, but that's what we're going to do. So what I did is I created two other layers. If you were to come here and do copy and paste, you would have to copy and paste this layer, and this layer 3 different times. It doesn't let you copy and paste them all at once. Or at least it didn't used to. So let's go ahead and unlock this and see if it will let us do it now, but I don't think it will. So we'll select all those. We're going to hit Command A, Command C, and go over here and Command V. And C, as you can see, it only pasted one layer. So that's not going to work. So let's go ahead and delete this because that's not what we want to do. So we have all three of these layers selected. I hit Command D to deselect it. So all three are selected, and the way I did that was click on the first one, hold Shift, click on the last one, they're all selected. And then you want to make sure that you have that move tool. This is the key. Move tool must be selected. And listen to what I say. I'm going to left click and I'm going to hold my left click down. I'm not going to let my left click up. So I'm going to left click, hold. You can see because it's yellow. I'm going to drag up to the tab that I want. I'm going to drag back down and listen to this. Your other hand, hold the Shift key, then let go of the left click, and then let go of the Shift key. And what that does is center your image. You don't have to center it in this case, but if that's what you want to do, it centers. But you can see it brought over all those layers. Now, all those layers are applying. However, these layers are also going to apply to this image as well now because they're on top and layer order matters. If I want this layer and this layer to only apply to this layer, we need to clip it. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply come into here and let me open my properties up. You'll come down here. This little box, that arrow is for clipping. So you can either just clip this box like that, and that says, hey, it's going to apply to that layer only. Or you can go in between these two layers while you hold the Option on a Mac, most likely an Alt on the PC. And you see how the cursor changes to that? You left click and then you've clipped. So this and this are now only applying to that, not to that layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to this layer, and I'm simply going to blend it. So I can go to multiply, and you can see we now have just the birds in the background. Well, why? Well, because multiply blending mode drops the white and keeps the black. And so now we've simply blended those birds into the background without selecting them. Now I could move that around and do all kinds of stuff, but that's not the point of what we're doing here. We're just trying to show you how to get first layers together. And there's multiple ways to do layers together. So I'm going to go ahead and close this layer out because we're not going to use this. Do not be confused by what I did here. So the images that I work with are right here under images copy. And you'll notice I put a blend layer, a blend layer, a blend layer, and the base layer. Don't worry about this stuff. We're not using it. That's just a configuration of this slide so I can use it. And over here, we've got our blending modes. Now, blending modes are activated by in the layers panel right there. You go over here where it says normal, all right? And you drop down on this menu. So we have normal, dissolve, and these are our darken. They're subdivided by this little line. These are our lighten. These are contrast. These are inverting, and these are color, okay? And we're going to be taking a look. We're going to skip these because they don't really do anything, but we're going to look at these and these today. Normal is very simple. So if we're on normal, and right here is my blending layer, so I can see what I've set up. Let's go ahead and turn both of these images off. The original image over here and the image over here. If I place this gradient over top of it, that becomes my blend layer. And so the way this works is if I want to blend the gradient layer with the polar bears layer, the way both dissolve and normal work is, all you need to do is take the opacity and drag it down, and as you drag it down, the two are going to blend, okay? If we switch to dissolve, it just does this weird dissolve effect. Essentially, the way those two work are just lowering your opacity of the layer, and they blend. Sometimes this is helpful, sometimes it's not helpful. So we're going to go ahead and get that back up to 100%, and we're going to take this back to normal so nothing's happening. And we're going to turn this back on. And so what we have here, and notice I've highlighted these because these are all darkening the image somehow. So the way I've set up this is our original image. Over here is our original image, exactly the same, except for I've put some information and a gradient over it. This gradient is showing you the K value is black, so that's 100% black, 75% black, 50% gray in this essence, 25% and pure white. There's no gray, okay? So that's how we have that set up. And this is going to help show you how this works. The first thing we need to take a look at is right here, our blending mode. Our first one is called the Darken. And Darken isn't used so often. The main ones that I use here are multiply, but Darken's probably the second most used. So darken, and look, I understand these are the definitions from Adobe, and they are very complicated sometimes to understand, and I'm going to do my best to explain them to you. Darken looks at the color information in each channel and selects the base or blend color, whichever is darker, as the result color. Pixels lighter than the blend color are replaced. Pixels darker than the blend color do not change. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, first of all, it's looking at the channel information. So if we go over to channels, and let me make this bigger so you guys can see it. So panel options, and let's turn those on larger. And now you can at least see them a little bit larger. So we have the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel. And so what this is saying is when you're in layers, it's looking at the blend layer and the base layer, okay? Whichever is darker is what is going to show up, okay? So let's take a look at that. Let's go here to darker, and you'll notice that the darker channels and the darker color for both red, green, and blue. Remember, it's looking at them independently. So sometimes there might be a channel where it's being applied in the blue channel, but not the green channel. I think that's rare, but that's what we're doing. Right here, whatever is darker, well, the top layer is darker, so it's replacing the pixel with that color, which really always isn't that helpful. So right here, anytime the color is darker, it's replacing the pixel. And since this is just a gradient, it's just kind of this gray area. Would this be a great way to use darker? No, but it's showing you what's happening. 50%, 25%, because the pixels below in the polar bear are darker than this layer of the gradient, it's keeping the polar bear. And right here, almost all the pixels in the image are going to be darker in the base layer, which is the polar bear layer, because this is pure white. It just totally drops out white. And that's why it's really helpful. Anything white, you're not going to see anything in an effect. Anything that's black, you're only going to see black. Because Darken works that it's replacing the pixel with whatever's on top, and because I made a gradient, which isn't intelligent, it's just replacing that, which doesn't work so good. Let's come down here and turn this off, and let's go to these birds. So if I turn these birds on, and we're just going to leave these little numbers up here, they're not going to do anything. You can see we've got this white image of the birds, and there's no value in this white. I've made it pure white. And then we've got that. Now, right now it's overlapping because we're not blending it in any way. So if I click on that layer and I go up to the darken mode, you can see the birds are all darker than the sky color. So it's going to keep the darken, or the birds, and blend them perfectly into the background. Now, multiply is going to do the same thing, but it's going to darken the birds up a little bit. But essentially, this would be a really intelligent way to use blending, because we just drop the white and keep the black, which is what we want. We add birds into the background. Voila, we're done. So that is how Darken works. So we're going to go ahead and close out of Darken. All right, we are in our second blending mode, in multiply is my favorite. So we're going to take a look at this. And these are set up exactly the same as the other images before. We'll go ahead and close this so you don't see it. We've got the polar bears. They're being hidden. We would turn that one off. And we've got our grayscale. So white to black, and multiply. Looks at the color information in each channel and multiplies the base color by the blend color. All right. So it multiplies the base color by the blend color. So the base color is the bears and the gradient is the blend layer. The result is always a darker image. Multiplying any color with black produces black. Multiplying any color with white leaves the color unchanged. So the way this one works, and it's completely different from the Darken, though it's very similar. So if we come down here and we click on this and we change to Darken, remember it's replacing the top pixel on the bottom image, which kind of doesn't look so good in this image. However, if we change to multiply, what it's doing, it's not replacing the pixel on top, except for in the case when it's completely black. But if the pixel on the gradient is darker than the pixel below, it's darkening that pixel below. So it's darkening the pixel in the polar bear. So it's basically darkening the image as a gradient. Where it's white, it's leaving it unchanged as nothing is happening. This one seems to work a whole lot better. So let's turn this off and let's turn the birds on. Once again, we can select the birds. We can go to either Darken or Multiply. But in this case, I'm going to simply drop the white, keep the black. The birds blend into the image exceptionally. So that's how you use Multiply. Multiply, and you'll see screen and the lightning blending modes are the two that I use the most. So let's switch on over to the next one, which is color burn. We have the same thing. So color burn looks at the color information in each channel and darkens the base color to reflect the blend color by increasing the contrast of the two. Blending with white produces no change. So the way this one is working, in Multiply, it darkened the base color depending on what the value was in the blend color. Now, in this one, it's increasing the contrast. So it's doing it in a little bit different mode. So before it was darkening it depending on what the pixel color was. In this one, it's increasing the contrast. So if we delete that and we select this layer and we come over here to color burn, you can see we're getting this sort of weird effect. It's increasing the contrast of the image below if the pixel on top is darker. So here, nothing's happening. Here, where pixels on the top are darker than the one below, it's increasing the contrast. Now you can see right here, because a lot of the values are darker, it's really increasing the contrast. And it's doing it here so much that it's making the bear almost completely black. And then we're getting some weird colors, because remember, this is doing it in each channel, which is red, green. You're going to see that crazy blue. That's where it's getting that effect. I think that's some sort of banding that's going on in the image that we see. So let's go ahead and click on that. And that's the way color burn works. So if we go back to the layers, we go back to layers and we turn off this layer and we turn on our birds layer and we switch that to color burn. So in this case, remember, it's not darkening the pixel. It's actually increasing the contrast of the pixels. So the images are just falling apart. So in this case, color burn doesn't work so well for this image. We are inside of linear burn. Linear burn looks at the color information in each channel and darkens the base color to reflect the blend color by decreasing the brightness, okay? Blending with pure white produces no change. So listen to that. The top channel, so let's close this. So the blend channel and the base channel. So this is our blend up here. It looks at the information in each channel and darkens the base color. So it's going to darken the polar bears to reflect the blend color, which is this, by decreasing the brightness. So let's click on this and we're going to come up here and we're going to drop down to linear burn. So in linear burn, it's looking at each channel. Here are the channels. It's going to do this in the red, in the green, and in the blue. And it's decreasing the brightness, which is darkening the image depending on what the color is above. So this is 25%. So this whole area where this color is darker than the one below, it is darkening it by 25%. Here it's darkening it by 50%. Here 75%. And here 100%. And 0, not at all. All right, so you see this common theme of how these go, and this is going to happen in all of these images. So we can come and turn this off. We can turn our little birds on, select our birds, and go to linear burn, and boom, just like that, linear burn is showing up. And well, why is it showing up? Because it is darkening the image below dependent on whatever the value is. So it's not changing the value of the birds, it's just darkening that pixel for whatever the bird's value is. So in essence, it looks exactly the same. So what we're going to see is, yes, in this example, the birds are coming out exactly the same in some of these different blending modes. But when you take a look at more colorful and dynamic images, the way they interact is a lot different. So the last one that we're going to take a look at is darker color. So I'll switch on over here to darker color, and darker color says compares the total of all channels. So this is the first one that's done this. It's comparing the total of all the channels for the blend and the base color. So it's looking at the red, green, and blue together on how it blends this layer with this layer. So darker color compares the total of all channel values for the blend and base color and displays the lower value color. So whatever is lower, it's going to display that color. Darker color does not produce a third color, which can result from the darkened blend because it chooses the lowest channels values from both the base and the blend color to create the result. So this is doing something very similar to Darken, but it's using the total instead of the individual channels. And yes, I understand this is difficult to understand. So let's go ahead and change this. So in this instance, it's looking at the red, the green, the blue channels, and it's taking all of them into account instead of individually. And where there's 100% white, nothing's going to happen. where you have 25% gray. If that gray is darker, it's replacing that pixel with the gray pixel. And that's why we're getting that weird funky effect like we saw in Darken. And it's doing that for all these different values. So it's taking the total sum here, and in Darken, it was looking at each individual channel and making that adjustment. These are all mathematical algorithms. How they work and how the algorithm is written, I have absolutely no clue, but this is giving you an idea of what they do and how they affect your image. So let's turn this off, turn our birds back on, change this to darker color, and you can see, yes, this works perfectly. We can simply blend those birds into the background. Essentially, that's what we want to do. What we're trying to do is making the task of blending easy. In this case, there's multiple blending modes that work well for this. However, you might use two completely different images than this. The way they interact is a lot different. Look, I purposely picked birds where it's white and black. If I picked a more complicated image, you would see the blend process doesn't work as well. So let's take a look at a real world example of using the darkening blending modes. So we have two images, and I chose this image because it's really dark and really light. And the goal of blending modes is so you don't have to make a selection to blend two areas together. Sometimes that's just inevitable. You're going to have to do it. But so the goal here is to blend two images together using blending modes, not using a selection. So I chose this image, and then that's my base color, this picture that we see here. And then my blend is this kind of really weird kind of thing of these crows, and it's very strong and graphic. So I've got dark and light and noise in it. And so we're going to take this and we're going to blend it over the image that we had below. So simply all we got to do is take this image and start hovering over our different blending modes. So we've got the darken mode. And if you remember, the darken is going to take the value and replace it with the one below. So it's not blending it with her skin. It's just taking the aspect of the top image and blending it below. And then multiply, it's taking a look at the two and it's making it darker. So it's actually taking the value of the crows and the trees that's darker, and it's making it even darker and then blending it over her face. And so here we've got contrast blending. So if we want this even stronger, so here we're doing it more subtle, but if we want a stronger look and it's darkening the whole image, we can do that by blending with contrast. Then we have our example here with linear burn and then with darker color. And look, there's no right way. So if this is the one you like, that's the one you use. If this is the effect you want, that's the one you use. If this is the one you want, that's the effect, all right? Different images are going to interact together differently. I could sit here and do a million examples and they're all going to work completely differently. The goal here of what I'm trying to show you is if we have two images where the contrast values are very different, meaning in the bottom image, we have really dark and really light. It's going to make it really easy to blend the dark values of the blend image, which is the crows, the light area, which is what I want. So I wanted to add a little bit of color to this image so you can see how just by simply changing one little aspect of this image can really control the way that this image looks. It's going to look a lot different. So we're creating a gradient map, and essentially what's going to happen is in the shadow areas, we're putting this color, and in the highlight areas, we're putting this color. That's essentially all I did. So we're turning this on and off. It's putting those colors in. I've put this gradient map below the birds, so the color is not affecting the birds. It's only affecting our subject. And then when I come up here and I turn the birds back on, and this is the original way that we had it, and select it. So now when we change these blending modes, and I'll come up here and we go to darken, notice that before, when the area of the woman was really dark out over here, it was hiding all this information. We are only getting the blend right in here. So if I turn this off, we'll see what happens. So darken, notice it's only blending in that one area. We're not seeing the areas on the outside because those areas are darker. However, when I turn the blue on and it replaces, we're starting to pick up those areas. So the way in which the blending modes interact in this mode In this image, by adding that gradient map is going to be a lot different. So we've got darken, multiply, which I like better, color burn, linear burn, and darker color. So if we go up to multiply, and let's say I just wanted this area or aspect of the woman, we wanted to kind of hide those polka dots, what looks sort of weird, we can simply easily do that. So I've created this blank layer, and basically the reason I want the blank layer is so that if I want to undo it at any one time, I can go ahead and get rid of it. So essentially all I need to do this is I'm actually going to paint black in this area. And the reason I can paint black is because remember, this is turning the area blue. So this is going to go over the black and turn it blue. But if it's black, it's also going to hide. So I'm essentially just going to come in here, paint black into this location. And now we hide those polka dots that we saw on her dress, but we're just simply getting our subject in here. And we have this sort of dynamic image, and we are combining it in a completely different way, depending on if the gradient is there or not there. So that is the end of this video on darkening blending modes. The next video, we will take a look at lightning blending modes and then the contrast blending modes. If you found this video helpful and could give us a thumbs up, that would be great. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. Don't forget to subscribe and have an absolutely wonderful day.